Life can sometimes seem perfect until reality shatters the illusion. For Julie, everything seemed to be going well until 5 months ago.
On the list
she ended what she thought would be her forever relationship with the man she had planned to spend her life with.
I think.
It wasn't an easy decision.
There's a
Leaving him felt like tearing out a piece of her heart. She had dreamed of a life together, full of laughter and shared dreams. But deep down, she knew staying would mean sacrificing parts of herself. To make matters worse, Julie's beloved grandma was slowly slipping away to dementia, losing memories of the moments they'd once cherished together. It felt as if the walls of her life were closing in, leaving her trapped in a dark, lonely place. Each day became a struggle, her heart weighed down by grief and guilt, but she was holding on, one small step at a time, trying to find a way forward. Julie worked at the local library, where her days were spent shelving books and helping readers find their next adventure. It was supposed to be a quiet, comforting place, but her mind rarely stayed in the moment. Instead, it wandered to her grandma, to the memories slipping away like sand through her fingers. One day, as she was lost in thought, her best friend Cheryl appeared, her face filled with concern. Cheryl was never one to sugarcoat things, and that day was no exception. Julie, you look terrible, she said bluntly, crossing her arms as she assessed her friend's pale face and tired eyes. Julie forced a smile, deflecting Cheryl's concern with sarcasm, but inside, she knew Cheryl was right. The sleepless nights, the constant ache of loss, and the weight of her own mind were becoming unbearable. Maybe, as Cheryl suggested, it was time to seek help from someone who could really understand. Taking Cheryl's advice to heart, Julie decided to see a therapist. The very next day, she found herself sitting in Dr. Thompson's office, feeling both nervous and relieved. The room was warm and cozy, with gentle lighting that softened the space. Dr. Thompson himself was an older man, probably in his late 50s, with a calm presence that made Julie feel safer, if only for a moment. "Tell me what's on your mind, Julie," he began, his voice calm and inviting. Julie hesitated, searching for where to begin. She managed to say, "It's everything. I feel like I'm drowning."
Thank you. It should be
Dr.
fun.
Thompson nodded, understanding that her pain was multi-layered, not just about her breakup or her grandma's illness, but an overwhelming sense of loss. Over the next few sessions, Julie found herself revealing things she hadn't even admitted to herself. She felt raw and vulnerable, but the release of years of bottled-up pain and sadness slowly brought a sense of relief. Each session with Dr. Thompson helped Julie peel back another layer of her emotions. She started to open up about her deepest fears and the loneliness she'd felt in her relationship. Dr. Thompson listened intently, responding with gentle encouragement. "You've got so much on your shoulders, Julie. It's no wonder you feel this way,"
They
he'd
made
say,
friends with people
and
there
she
who
would feel a
invited
little
them to
lighter.
the next place, and they
For the first
eventually
time,
ended
Julie
up
felt
staying
like
until
someone
like
truly
5
understood her
a.m.
struggles. Therapy became her sanctuary, a place where she could explore her emotions without fear of judgment. As the weeks went by, her burden felt a little less heavy, and a small glimmer of hope returned.
It was a private event
Then,
at first.
one day
Was
after
it?
a session, she walked out of
So,
Dr.
but they went
Thompson's
back there
office
eventually?
feeling lighter than she had in months. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything, and she found herself smiling for the first time in what felt like forever. But her relief was short-lived. Later that evening, while she was
okay,
eating
30
up a
minutes
simple
later.
dinner
Fair
in a
enough.
tiny apartment, her phone buzzed with a message.
Panty Beach,
It was
thank
from
you.
Dr.
Happy H
Thompson,
Day, Mr.
reminding her about
Each
a follow-up
day.
appointment. Staring at the
Good
message,
morning.
Julie realized just how
That's
much
pretty
she
cool.
relied on her sessions.
I'm glad they had a good time.
She wasn't
Thank
sure
you,
how she felt about
Stian.
meeting someone so deeply. Still, she couldn't deny that her sessions were becoming a lifeline. Over time, she built a fragile trust in Dr.
Is it
Thompson,
Century? A
something she
privately
hadn't
owned
felt in
Century?
years.
Jerome?
Yet, as the months
34
rolled on,
months, thank you
that
very
line
much.
between professional and personal began to blur. Eventually, after a breakthrough session, Dr. Thompson suggested they meet outside the office, maybe for coffee. At first,
I didn't know you could own a
unsure
Century
if
like
it was
so easily.
appropriate. But his warmth
Classic.
and gentle approach reassured her, and she agreed, curious to see a
Anyway.
different side of the man who had been helping her rediscover herself. On a bright Wednesday afternoon, they met at a cozy cafe, both of them a bit awkward. and
Anyway,
eager to chat.
the
It was strange seeing Dr.
it's
Thompson,
time to get the show on the
or
road.
rather, James,
Today's
as he
not
asked her to
lovely
call
weather,
him,
though.
outside the office. He was dressed casually in jeans and a shirt, looking more like a friend than the composed
light
professional
color
she was used
privately
to.
owned Century.
The conversation flowed easily, and Julie found herself laughing at his stories and opening up about her own life beyond their sessions. She shared her new hobby of painting, which she'd taken up as a way to cope.
It's not cycling
James
friendly,
listened intently,
so I'm gonna
his
have to get
gaze
a,
warm and
scooter,
encouraging.
loop scooter.
Then,
I
as he
think.
leaned forward, his
That's probably the
expression
way to go.
softened. "You're incredibly strong, Julie. I've watched you grow through so much," he said quietly. Julie blushed, feeling a warmth in his compliment that she hadn't felt in a long time. It was a turning point, one that made her wonder if she'd found something beyond therapy in James's companionship. As they met for coffee and casual dinners over the next few weeks, their relationship deepened. It was like discovering a new friend who truly understood her. James became someone she could lean on, especially with her grandmother's worsening condition. But soon after they began dating, something changed. His care and protectiveness, which initially comforted her, started feeling like control. He'd make comments about her friends, subtly discouraging her from meeting them. "You're better off without them," he'd say. Or, "They don't really care about you." Julie brushed off these comments, thinking he was just concerned. But then his control tightened. He began questioning her whereabouts, wanting to know every detail of her day. "Who were you talking to?" he'd ask, his tone hard. Julie felt a pang of unease, but she convinced herself it was just his way of showing he cared.
Don't drink too little.
Yet the nagging feeling grew stronger, like a warning she couldn't ignore. Before long, James's controlling behavior extended to every corner of Julie's life. He insisted she quit her job at the library, saying he could take care of her financially. "You don't need to work, Julie. Trust me," he would say, his tone both reassuring and firm. Though reluctant, Julie eventually agreed, thinking it was best to keep peace in their relationship. But soon after, she began to feel the weight of her dependency on him. She missed the independence her job had given her, the sense of purpose and freedom it had provided. Now she found herself isolated, with James being her only connection to the outside world. Gradually, her once lively spirit faded, replaced by a deep sense of unease and regret.
That's very kind of you.
She started to see that the man she thought she loved
You guys
was not
enjoying
who
this
he appeared to be.
current
But by the time she
big
realized
bus?
this, James had constructed a cage
I'm
around
on
her
the way.
life,
Hey, 44
leaving her
months.
trapped and isolated.
Japan.
The situation worsened when James started monitoring her every move. He'd check her phone, questioning every message and call.
I do need to get some throat lozenges.
"Who is Cheryl?"
though.
he demanded one night, his eyes filled with suspicion.
I ate all of mine yesterday.
"She's my best friend," Julie replied, her voice small,
What are you
hoping to calm
stalling
his
for?
anger.
I'm just
But James
vibing.
scoffed,
I'm
dismissing her
enjoying this
explanation.
moment. The sun, today's
"She's no
last
good for you.
remaining sun.
I don't want you talking to her anymore," he said
Kind
coldly,
of through the
his tone leaving no
clouds.
room for argument. Julie
People
felt a
moving
growing
all
sense
around.
of dread as she realized the extent of his possessiveness. She could hardly believe this was the same man who had once listened to her pain with such kindness. Now he was the source
Definitely
of her
stalling for
suffering,
something.
and his
I'm
grip
not.
on her life felt
Honestly
inescapable.
not. This is one of the most comfortable
Trapped in his
positions.
web, Julie began to feel like a ghost in her own life, her vibrant personality smothered
Goodbye,
by
son.
James's controlling
This
presence.
is the last day of October.
Every day became a silent
Only
struggle
2 months until the
as
new
she
year.
tried to hold on to the last fragments of who she was.
I'm
One
not
night,
coming to the
after a
karaoke.
particularly heated argument,
Which one?
James's anger reached a
I don't
frightening
know what
level.
you're talking
"You think you can live without me?" he sneered, his voice filled with menace. Grabbing her arm,
2025,
he dragged her
you
to
ready?
a
Thank you,
small
Crappy
dark room
Barra.
at the back of the house,
The 15
locking
line.
her inside. "Maybe sometime in the dark will teach you to appreciate what you have," he said coldly before shutting the door. Left alone in the pitch black room, Julie's
This
heart
is an
pounded
essay.
with fear. She had always been terrified of the dark, a fear she had once confided in him, back when she thought he cared. Now, he was using her deepest fears against her, leaving her trembling and helpless. Hours passed in the suffocating darkness, each minute amplifying her terror. She felt a breaking point approaching, but in the midst of her despair, a flicker of defiance stirred. She knew she couldn't keep living like this. She had to find a way out, for the sake of her sanity.
Good combo would be
and her
great
life.
though.
Days
We are
after
getting the
this
grimmest
terrifying
shake, I
incident,
think.
Julie discovered she was pregnant. Holding the positive test in her trembling hands,
What bird is
a
a
surge of
Macca's costume?
emotions
Let's go.
washed over
Time
her.
to ride.
Fear, confusion, and a fierce determination
bird
to
is a
protect
McDonald's
her
costume?
unborn child. She hoped the news would soften James, perhaps rekindling the kindness he once showed her. But when she told him, his reaction was cold and unfeeling. "A baby? No, that's not happening," he said, dismissing her hopes in an instant. Julie felt a wave of despair as she realized the depth of his cruelty. This was no longer just about her.
Big
She
Bird
had to
is part
protect
of
her
the
child
Macca's
from the
crew?
darkness James had brought into her life. Summoning all her courage, she reached out to her cousin Charles, who worked with the FBI. Whispering her story over the phone, Julie felt a glimmer of hope as Charles reassured her, promising to help her escape. It was the first time in months she felt a lifeline, a fragile thread pulling her toward freedom.
Thank
The
you,
plan was
Jerry.
set, and the day of her escape arrived.
Happy Halloween. Thanks, man.
Happy
As
Halloween.
police burst through the door, arresting
Thank you
James,
very much.
Julie watched in stunned relief. Charles stepped forward, his face filled with fierce protectiveness. "You're safe now, Julie," he said, his words like a balm to her soul. She felt
Rob
tears
is
streaming down her
cycling
face,
slow. Can you
the
not-
weight of her suffering finally
Listen,
lifted.
guys, you're reading too much into
Later,
it. You're
as
never
she
gonna
settled
get
into
to
her
the
own
costume.
apartment, her heart swelled
There's
with
no
gratitude.
shot.
She had survived,
After I put
not
it
just for
on,
herself, but
then
for
I
her
will
unborn
take
child.
Questions.
The
I mean,
darkness
not
of her
questions.
past lingered,
I will
but it
tell
no
you if
longer
you're
held
right or
power
wrong
over
with
her.
your guesses.
With each passing day, she rebuilt her life, drawing strength from her newfound freedom. Holding her baby close, Julie finally felt
Hey,
at peace,
chicken.
knowing they were
And
safe.
Nemo, what's up, man?
The trauma of her past remained, but so did a fierce sense of hope. A hope that one day she could fully heal and reclaim the joy she had once lost.